Welcome to late October office hour. We're here with Nell, Liz, Christy, and Alan. Alan and Christy are in my current Harvard class. Excellent. Liz has been in classes with me for a long time, and Nell was in my Harvard class last fall and has since done a couple of private workshops with me. So here we are. I have one question that Kim wanted me to touch on with regard to transitions, but you guys are here, so let's start with questions that you guys have.
Maybe this will fall under the transitions category, but
Yeah.
I sometimes feel like when I'm going from a flashback or somebody's internal memory and then I'm going back into the present, it can be sort of a clunky transition. Like you don't want to say like, well, suddenly I realized he was talking to me, or you're you want the focus to come back into the present, and I feel like sometimes I'm not good at doing that. Is that what you mean by transition?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
Well, so the big point that I'm making these days about transitions is that there are three kinds of transitions, which you guys have probably all heard me say a number of times, but I will do them here. The three kinds of transitions are place, time, and point of view. So, and so those are the really general concepts for transition. And now in our class, we're getting a little bit more into narrative distance transitions, which are more subtle than point of view, but we could say hypothetically that they fall into the same category. So the really big thing with transitions initially is just to know when you're making them. And that's where people really get into trouble, is when they don't know they're making them. So they're switching point of view and they don't recognize that as a transition. They're switching narrative distance and they don't know that's a transition. And so these are things where the reader can get really lost. When you're doing flashback, you're talking about a transition of time and place. And so, at the base of it, if you are actually conscious of that transition and you're trying to do it, even if it's clunky, the fact that you're trying to manage it is um, is like the really important start. Like you know what you're doing, you're trying to manage it, and you're on the right track. And then from there, I think what happens a lot is that people try to make transitions really quickly. Like one thing that they'll do is just have like scene break and then jump into the next scene. And that Carver example from Put Yourself in My Shoes uh, really shows how he like basically ends a scene and then gives like sort of a wind down of that scene, sort of a denouement or something that just makes for connective tissue. I'm really into the idea of connective tissue these days. If you're doing any kind of exercise, people are probably talking to you about your fascia and how you have to roll them out with those big, whatever color, white, blue, or black or gray rollers. In my day, everybody was all about stretching, and now stretching is like de rigueur. Everybody's got to roll out your fascia, and that's more important. So fascia is the connective tissue that goes under our skin and connects all the stuff. And if you're thinking about fascia with regard to your story, this is the connective tissue that a lot of early writers don't have because they think they got to keep the pace moving along. They're worried about their reader getting bored. They're worried about if it's moving fast enough. And so a big part of what we've been doing in class is me trying to get people to slow down. But in those transitions, if you look at what Carver does in Put Yourself in My Shoes, and there's a video where I go over this that I can share with people if they don't have it. He really sort of like, there's a first scene ends with the end of a phone call where they're going to meet at the bar. And then the rest of that scene is him hanging up the phone, getting his coat on, and going to his car. He starts his car, he starts driving, and then there's a scene break. So you've got that white space. And then after the white space, he's driving. He's seeing the snow on the houses or the buildings. He's seeing the other Christmas shoppers. And, because of the way that he handles this, we learn a tremendous amount about the character. We see his body in space. We see him driving in the car and understand how he looks at the others and sort of views them as happy Christmas shoppers. And he's kind of making himself an other. And this is sort of a part of his depression or whatever. Uh, but the writer is really able to show this stuff in a way that we can connect to the reader, connect to the character, and start making a read on him. And that's the connective tissue that I think is so important that people often want to just get rid of and just go from like end of scene. Yeah, I did everything that I needed to do in that scene. Done. White space. Next scene. And so with the Carver example, rather than just jumping from the end of the phone call to meeting his wife at the bar, he leaves the house, starts driving, scene break. He's driving, he gets to the bar, he goes in, and when he enters the bar, that's an opportunity to give a view of what that setting is like. What does the bar look like? Well, where's the door when he walks in? What table does he sit at? All of this stuff does so much to ground the reader, and that is really where my focus has been in the teaching lately, like getting writers to ground the reader, and that's what the connective tissue does. So as a general term, that's what's important. And when you're coming out of a flashback, there's a lot of different ways to do it, but as long as you're being careful and just, be mindful that your reader might have the mental facility of like, might be physically like a little old man, and you sort of have to just lead him carefully along the trail as opposed to just like jumping him over this chasm.
Right.